We now finally have another Mario Golf game in our hands, and I thought it would be appropriate to take a look back at the entire series to see how it's grown from its Nintendo 64 roots all the way up to the Switch. We'll be talking about 5 different games in the series today, and I will be omitting Super Rush just to save anyone from spoilers that hasn't had a chance to play it. Also, I haven't had a chance to play it because it came out today, and I hope you all have fun with it. It only feels natural to start with the beginning of the series, Mario Golf for the Nintendo 64. Yes, I have to specify for the Nintendo 64 because they also released almost at the same time, but it was a little later, Mario Golf for the Game Boy Color. To start, it's important to mention that this is considered Mario's very first sport game. Mario Tennis came out a year later in 2000, so Mario Golf in 1999 started it all. It was developed by Camelot, who went on to also make the tennis series and most of the golf series. I suppose I will explain the game of golf for anyone who may be lost. Basically, you hit the golf ball with clubs to get it as close to the hole as you can, and then you want to sink it into the hole with the least amount of strokes possible, and you want the lowest score you can get. In Mario Golf, the sport is played by first aiming your shot, and then pressing A when you want to confirm where you want it to go. This starts the sliding bar animation. When the bar gets all the way to the left, you'll want to press A to get the most powerful shot you can, then you'll want to press A once again when the cursor goes back to the starting point, and this will determine your accuracy. Of course, there's many other factors that come into play, such as wind speed, the slope of the ground, the type of the ground that you're hitting from, the type of club you're hitting with. All of these can affect the ball height, ball distance, speed, so many different things that make it a very realistic golf experience. And I gotta say, this is one of the first golfing golf experiences in a video game. Up to this point, most golfing games were displayed 2D. It's kind of a pixelated ground and you just hit the ball, it goes above the sprite of the course and you need to hit it into the 1 pixel wide hole. This is golf. It's golf. You can see the slope of the ground, you can see the wind going by. They really have everything in that they would want in for golf. I'm saying golf a lot and it's starting to not sound like a word. Probably the most important thing about golf games are the courses. What areas will you be playing through while you go on a quest to unlock every character and every side mode you can? Lucky for us, Mario Golf starts out with a solid 6 full courses. Starting with the Toad Highlands, which is just a very basic grassland, super flat course, great for beginners. Then you have Koopa Park, which has a little bit more slope to the areas, but is very similar to Toad Highlands otherwise. Next up you have Shy Guy Desert, and this is where they start to increase the difficulty. You'll start seeing tons of sand traps, which are really difficult to get out of once you hit into it. In addition to that, there's a lot less rough ground and a lot more out of bounds areas. And if you hit a ball out of bounds, not only do you have to hit it from a worse spot, but you also get a stroke penalty for hitting it in the first place. Next up is Yoshi's Island. You're going to see a lot of water hazards here, along with a lot of sand traps. Water hazards are very similar to out of bounds, basically the same thing, they can be treated as such. There's also giant fruit, make of that what you will. Boo Valley might look simpler on the surface, but the fairways are a lot less thin and there's almost no rough area to speak of. Everything else is a pit. Again, this can be treated as out of bounds. There are, however, very few bunkers and only 2 water hazards in the entire course, so the fairway itself is a bit simpler. And then the final stage, Mario's Star. This isn't outright more difficult than Boo Valley, but the terrain is really odd because all of the fairways are based off of a Mario character. And that's all 6 courses, but there's actually 2 more. There's 2 courses specifically for mini golf called Luigi's Garden and Peach's Castle. I'd go over these in depth, but I really don't need to. These are mini golf stages, but there's not really any movement to them. You just basically have a weirdly shaped putting green. That's about it. Usually in the shape of a letter or a number. They could have done a lot more with this mode, but it is what it is. To start out, you only have Toad Highlands unlocked. To unlock all the other courses, you'll need course points, which you get from playing on courses. Weird, isn't it? The fastest way to get course points would be to play in tournament mode, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Before we start going over modes, let's start talking about the characters. This is the most wild part about this game. So you start with 4 characters, and you can probably guess a few of them. Mario and Luigi, that's a shoo-in, right? Well, no. you don't start with Mario. But good news, you start with everyone's favorite Mario character, Plum, and Charlie, you know, from Mario Bros. 3. No, these are original characters made for the Mario Golf franchise. But hey, at least you start with Princess Peach and Baby Mario, but that's it. Out of the entire roster of 18 characters, you start with 4, and you have to unlock all the others, mostly through character matches, which I'll go over in a bit. In order, you'll be unlocking the characters Luigi, Yoshi, Sunny, another original character, Wario, who has pink shoes in this game because of a texture glitch, Harry, yet another original character, Mario, for your 6th unlocked character, finally you get Mario, and then Bowser. There's yet 3 more characters that aren't unlocked through character matches, Maple by collecting 50 birdie badges, Donkey Kong by getting 30 stars and ring shots, and the piece de resistance, Metal Mario, by collecting all 108 birdie badges. What's a birdie badge, you may ask? A birdie badge is given to you when you get a birdie or better on a course, which means you get 1 point under par. This is incredibly hard to do, but it does net you the characters Maple and Metal Mario, who is arguably the best character in the game. Characters differ in only a few aspects. Number 1, their drive distance. This ranges from 208 meters with Plum, all the way up to 285 meters with Metal Mario. However, something to be considered. The farther their drive range, the less accurate their shots will be, so it'll be a lot harder to play as them, but more rewarding if you get good accuracy on your shots. The other main way they differ is through their shot arc. There's 3 different kinds: straight, fade, and draw. For casual play, this really won't matter to anyone much. It basically just tells you which way the ball will lean whenever you shoot it really high. It's worth keeping in mind because you can get around certain obstacles with a certain type of shot, but it rarely comes into play. Oh, and I guess the last difference they have is they all have a nice shot effect. Whenever you get a perfect shot, there'll be a little effect on the ball. But wait, I said there's 18 characters, and that's only 14. Well, this game actually had some connectivity with the Game Boy Color version of Mario Golf. If you use a transfer pack to connect your Nintendo 64 to your Game Boy Color, you could transfer 4 characters from the Game Boy Color game. They're all not actual Mario characters, so you're not missing out on too much, but it's still 4 characters: Kid, Joe, Sherry, and Azalea. Bad news though if you have the Virtual Console version of the game. Instead of just including the characters from the beginning, which I don't imagine would be too hard to do, they're just unobtainable. You'll just forever have 4 empty slots under your character select screen, which I imagine is absolutely infuriating. Anyway, these are your characters. I tend to go down the middle of the road, not too weak, not too strong. Usually like Yoshi to Wario range. Yoshi has a drive of 230 meters, Wario has 250. For some reason, Mario has a drive of 270, which feels wildly strong for a character like him. But I like my Yoshi. Oh, one last thing. Every single character has 3 alternate colors. This is never done ever again, but the coolest part of it is that Metal Mario's alternate colors are a bronze, a gold, and a blue, oddly enough, which is very reminiscent of a certain other character, which actually appears in one of the games after this. Alright, now that we know the characters and the courses, let's talk about the game modes. First of all, you have the tournament mode. You could consider this the main mode of the game. You'll play against 29 computer players on the full 18-hole course. But wait, there's not 29 playable characters. How does that work? Well, actually the game pulls from random names from various games on the Nintendo 64, such as Bob-ombs, or even some Zelda characters sometimes on a tournament playlist. And sometimes they even use the names of voice actors and localizers. This is pretty basic play. You just want to get the lowest score you can and get one of the top 3 positions to earn a trophy. You'll get more course points when you finish a tournament in first place, so try to aim for that as much as you can. This is also the preferred way to get birdie badges because you're just playing through all of the courses all in a row. Next we have the Get Character mode. This is where you'll play your match games against CPUs that you haven't unlocked yet. Instead of tallying your total strokes, you'll get 1 point if you win a hole, and if you tie, neither player gets a point. Whoever gets to 9 points first wins, and if it happens to be you, you'll unlock whatever character you're going against. Next we have Ring Shot. This is famously difficult. You'll have to get through rings set across the hull. These can range from right in the direct path to the flag to being way off, and then you have to finish the hull with par or better. As I said before, this is how you unlock Donkey Kong. Next up is Speed Golf. Instead of trying to play for the lowest amount of strokes, you have to play for the lowest amount of time. So line your shots up fast and try to be as accurate as possible, but if you go over in strokes, doesn't really matter here. Stroke play is just normal golf. Think of it as tournament mode, but for multiplayer. Then you have mini golf mode. Like I said before, there's 2 courses just for it. It's not too interesting though, so I wouldn't blame you if you skip over this entirely. You have training mode where you can practice your shots and play around with different weather settings because rain does actually affect your shots, just to see the effect that it has. You usually don't need this. You'll learn enough just by playing in tournament mode because you'll need to play it quite a bit to get enough course points anyway. Match play is just like the character mode where you get a point for every hole you win, but it's for multiplayer. Skins match is very similar, but with up to 4 players allowed. And then you have club slots, where on each hole you will be given 3 different clubs that you're allowed to use. And only those clubs. This is great for learning how each club works. And that's pretty much everything mechanically about the game. Now I kind of want to talk about the aesthetics for a bit. It's ugly. I won't deny that it's ugly. It's on the Nintendo 64. They basically did as much as they could with the technology they had. Any trees or cactuses or anything on the courses at all are basically just stood up sprites that stand there and don't move at all. And the courses themselves are pretty undefined because they have to load the whole thing all at once, and they're pretty big. Also, again, Wario's shoes are pink, and I don't know if I can ever get over that. It's pretty for the Nintendo 64 though, I'll give it that, but they were very limited by the hardware. They couldn't really go crazy with course hazards or really weird course shapes because they were limited. But lucky for us, Toadstool Tour is basically just an upgraded version of this game. But before we go on to that, let's hit up the Game Boy Color version of the game. I say version, but it's not really the same game at all. In fact, it's an RPG. This game, of course, was also made by Camelot and has a mode that's just for golfing, similar to like the Nintendo 64 version, but the main juice is through the story mode. So I will talk about the characters and the courses themselves soon, but I think the most important thing to talk about this game is the story mode itself. Basically, you go to a golf club where they kind of treat the Mario characters as sports legends. This is a very similar concept to the tennis game where you go to a tennis school and same deal. After you get through the intro and you're introduced to the golfing club, you'll be allowed to roam around freely. You'll find characters that'll do little challenges like get this close to the hole or get a birdie on a certain course, and they'll give you experience points for doing so. Using these experience points, you can put skill points into each of your stats to increase them at your leisure. Putting points into one stat will lower the other stats. You'll still have a net gain. It's something to consider if you want everything to be even. Once you get a little bit into the game, you'll start playing full tournaments and you'll get a lot of experience from these, and you'll also progress the story. Eventually, you'll meet up with the Nintendo characters and play a match against them. And that's a good summary. I won't spoil everything, just in case you're interested in playing it yourself. Let's go into the courses now. So it should be mentioned that this is a much more not Mario-focused Mario Golf game. It's very generic in terms of its theming. We have 6 courses, once again, just like the Nintendo 64 version. And the courses are actually called clubs because you're playing at a club. You have the Marion Club first, which is your basic grassland course. It's not very difficult and you should be able to get through this one pretty easily. Also, I should mention, all of the courses in this game are that flat style I was talking about before. I personally feel like golf loses a little something if you can't see the full 3D effect, but I do also think that this game is very advanced for its time with what it's able to pull off on a Game Boy Color. Next up, you have the Palm course, which is a tropical course that has a lot more water and sand traps than the previous one, so it's a little bit more difficult. After that, you have the Dune Club, which, as you can probably tell, is a desert-themed area with tons of sand traps, very similar to the desert in the Nintendo 64 version. Then you have the Lynx Club, which is actually kind of unique. It's a seaside course, which actually means it has super high wind speeds, making it really difficult to pinpoint your shots. Then there's 2 unlockable courses, Peach's Castle, which is much more Mario themed than all the other courses, and also very difficult. And then there's the Golf Guru's Pitch and Putt, where every fairway is so ridiculously tiny and just littered with sand traps. This is a specific challenge like at the end of the game that you're put through, so it's meant to be a very difficult challenge. Some of the maps are just wild, and it's way, in my opinion, way harder than anything you'll experience in the Nintendo 64 version. There's also some things called field courses, which are smaller areas, not full courses. They're just used for some of the challenges that you'll do in story mode. Not much to really talk about here. Let's talk about those characters now. So, you start out with 6 characters unlocked. The 4 characters that can be transferred to the Nintendo 64 game, Kid, Sherry, Joe, and Azalea. And then you have Mario and Luigi, which makes more sense than the starting roster of the Nintendo 64 game, oddly enough. So what other Mario characters are there that you can unlock? Well, there's Wario. Yeah, that's it. The rest are all original characters. You can also unlock Putz, Grace, Tiny, and Genius. And you unlock all of them by playing them in match play and beating them, just like the original game. But yeah, you just have Mario, Luigi, and Wario as the playable characters, mainly so that they can all 3 play against you in a tournament, because you only play against 3 characters in a tournament in this game. And I guess it just made sense to have the 3 capped bros? Sure. Wario seems like an odd choice. They could have gone with Peach. There's a lot of characters that are actually in the game but aren't playable. Peach, Yoshi, Donkey Kong, Baby Mario, and Bowser all show up, but none of them are playable. Obviously, they had a lot of limitations with it being on the Game Boy Color, even more so than on the Nintendo 64. So yeah, sure, fair's fair, but also the fact that there's 8 original characters that are playable and 3 Mario characters seems like an odd choice. Also, Mario's the strongest character in the game, which is odd. Wario's right there. Why is he weaker? This makes 0 sense to me. Next up, we have Mario Golf Toadstool Tour on the GameCube. I feel like this is a great time to mention that Camelot always goes absolutely bonkers on their intro animations, and this is a great example of that. I love watching this. Another thing that I really love about the Mario Golf series is it never really gets worse. Which is a weird thing to say, but when you look at the Mario Tennis series, almost everyone thinks that it peaked with Power Tour, and I can't really disagree. But with Mario Golf, you're almost always going to get more content and more interesting courses the later you go on. And that's what we get here. It's basically a pure upgrade to the Nintendo 64 version. A bunch of new characters, a bunch of new courses, and some fun modes. And once more before we go in on those courses, I love that for some reason, the main instrument in all of the Mario Golf games up to this point is the steel drum. I don't think there's any correlation there in real life, but that's just how it is, and I gotta say, it absolutely works. Before we get too into it, there are a few basic mechanical changes that they did make going from Nintendo 64 to the GameCube. You can now put wild top spins and back spins on your shots, depending on the combination of buttons you press when you're shooting your shot. Such as, using the A button twice for power and accuracy will give you topspin. Using the B button twice for power and accuracy gives you backspin. That's the biggest difference. Everything else for the most case stays the same. There's going to be a few new mechanics introduced in every course, but we'll go over those as they come. First, let's talk about those courses. We actually have 7 to talk about here. Starting with Lakitu Valley. As always, this is your basic grassland course, very few sand traps. There's a few water hazards, but it's very flat and very beginner friendly. Next we have Cheep Cheep Falls. As you can probably tell from the name, there's a lot more water hazards and there's actually trees littered across the course. that will slow down your ball if you hit the ball through them. This is something that they really weren't able to do properly in the Nintendo 64 version, so it's a nice aesthetic addition. The courses are still pretty basic and pretty flat though. Next we have shifting sands. Again, as you can probably tell from the name, there's a lot more bunkers. We have a new ground called the waste area. Hitting these is like hitting your golf ball against a rock. It'll bounce super far off of it, but it counts as out of bounds if your ball stops on it. Next up we have Blooper Bay, which is probably a reference to Mario Sunshine if I were to guess. We actually get introduced to a new mechanic here called fast fairways. They're like fairways, but they're fast. If your ball bounces on it, it'll bounce much further than it normally would, and if it rolls along it, it goes on for like forever. Also, a lot of the bunkers are shaped in really fun little tropical shapes like seagulls or fruits. It's really neat. Next we have Peach's Castle Grounds, the first of the brutally difficult courses. This one's really just a love letter to the Mario franchise, with a lot of mechanics like warp pipes and chain chomps popping in. Chain chomps will dash at your ball to knock it off course, and a lot of holes have warp pipes littered around them where if you hit your ball into it, it'll pop out of the warp pipe on the other side. It's really cool. Also, there's a stage that's based off of Bob-omb Battlefield that has King Bob-omb sitting at the top of it, and it's super cool. And lastly, if you hit your ball through flowers, there's a chance that Pikmin will come flying out. In the last of the main courses, we have the Bowser Badlands. As you could probably guess, this one is brutally difficult. There's a lot of out of bounds area. It's kind of similar to the Boo Valley of the original game. The course layouts are wild with very thin fairways, jumping from fairway to fairway with gaps in between all of them. And there's a bunch of weird obstacles like hitting boos or thwomps that'll get in your way by moving around on the course. And lastly, we have the Congo Canopy. It's mostly made up of holes with weird shapes, and you're on top of trees. It's used for a lot of side modes like getting on the green in one shot and things like that. Unlocking all the tournaments is a lot simpler than the original game. You just have to beat the previous course and you unlock the next one, instead of having to get an arbitrary amount of course points to unlock each one. Next for the character selection. Such an improvement from the previous game. There's no original characters. This is all Mario all the time. You start out with Mario, Luigi, Peach, Daisy, Yoshi, Koopa, Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, Wario, Waluigi, Birdo, and Bowser. You then have 4 unlockable characters in Bowser Jr., Boo, Shadow Mario, and Petey Piranha.
And then on top of that, just like the Nintendo 64 game, you have 2 transferable characters from Advanced Store, Neil and Ella. These characters can be anything depending on how you grew them in the actual game. Can I just say, they did all of these characters so much love. Everyone has a different animation depending on what kind of score you get on a hole, and I absolutely love seeing them all completely ham it up whenever they get an eagle or better. Some characters even have different reactions for different scores, like Donkey Kong is going absolutely nuts for par, but Daisy's just sitting there like, really? It's all you could do.
Bowser Jr. is unlocked by doing the 18-hole birdie challenge. Boo is unlocked by obtaining 50 best badges, which is the same thing as birdie badges in the Nintendo 64 game, in tournament mode. Shadow Mario is unlocked by doing all of the ring attack holes, which is extremely difficult. And Petey Piranha is unlocked by basically doing every side game except Birdie Challenge, because Birdie Challenge unlocks Bowser Jr. This includes all the difficulties of shot practice, approach practice, and putting practice. Also, there's a new mechanic in the game called Star Characters. This basically makes your character much more powerful than they would normally be. For reference, Mario's drive is 212 yards. If he's a star character, his drive is 280 yards. And as a star character, you do not take a penalty in accuracy, so this increase in drive is purely a positive. So the stats in this game are a bit more intricate than the previous game. Of course, every character still has their drive length and they still have their shot type. However, it's not just simply a fade and a draw this time. Some characters have more of a fade than other characters with fades. Same goes for characters with draws. In addition to that, there's a bunch of new stats in shot height, shot impact, control, and spin. Height affects how high or low the ball shot will be. Impact affects the sweet spot marker when you aim for accuracy. Control affects how accurate your shots are if you miss the perfect shot. And spin affects how drastic the spin effects are if you choose to apply it to a shot. In general, characters with lower drives will have better stats for impact, control, and spin. And then height and shot type are completely independent from those. First, we'll look at the weakest character. Koopa, in Star Mode, has a 230-yard drive. They have a control stat of 14. We'll look at the most powerful character, Petey Piranha, who has a star character drive of 300 yards and has a control of 5, which is, in fact, the lowest in the game, tied with Bowser. Every other character is basically on a spectrum from Koopa to Petey Piranha. Shadow Mario is often considered one of the best characters because it has a great star drive distance of 275 yards, with a great impact stat, and a relatively okay control and spin stat. Well, compared to Petey Piranha. He also has one of the lowest shots in the game with a height level of -4, making it a lot less affected by winds. I just love how much detail they go into fleshing out each of these characters and making them feel truly different from each other. Even changing from Koopa, a light character, to a mid character like Mario feels like a world of difference. Now let's look at all the game modes. To be honest, not too much has changed here because a lot of the game modes from the Nintendo 64 version carry over. In single player, we have the tournament mode. You do this to unlock all the other courses. Then you have your character matches. Instead of unlocking the character itself, you actually unlock the star modes of characters. You have Ring Shot, which places a bunch of rings around holes. It's ridiculously difficult, especially once you get to the Bowser Badlands. Just good luck. Speed Golf, where you try to get the lowest time possible. The amount of strokes doesn't matter in this mode. And then Training, where you're allowed to play on any hole with any weather effect, just to practice. Unlike the Nintendo 64 game, you have unlockable modes in this game. After beating all of the tournaments, you unlock Star Tournaments, where you'll be competing against tougher star characters using the back tees, which basically means you have a farther distance to the hole, and using tournament greens, which are much more complicated than normal greens, with a lot more slopes to it. Beating all of these unlocks the tournament greens in every mode. Then you have all of the options that are available to you in multiplayer. You can play doubles, which is a 2-on-2 game of golf, basically just stroke play. Club slots, which again gives you a random assortment of clubs to play through each hole on. You have coin shoot, where there will be coins scattered throughout holes and you have to collect as many as you can, while also meeting par for the cup. Basic stroke play, where you just have to get the least amount of strokes in the game. There's the birdie challenge, where you try to get as many birdies in a row as you can. This one is another brutal mode. The highest score you can get is all 18 holes in a row. This takes place on Congo Canopy, by the way. And this is how you unlock Bowser Jr. If you unlock Bowser Jr., you get a harder version of birdie challenge, which is 1-on-1 putt, which means you have to take one shot to get on the green and then one more shot to get in the hole every single time. You have practice games, which is basically training mode but with multiplayer. Match play, where you get a point after beating every hole and it doesn't actually count your strokes individually. Skins match, which is exactly like match play but for 2 to 4 players. And then near pin mode, which is on Congo Canopy once again, where you just have to get as close to the pin as you can. Closest one wins. I just want to say that even though I love some of the games coming up after this game has the best course designs out of all the games in the series. Specifically in Peach's Castle Grounds and Bowser's Badlands, there's like a new hazard introduced for every single hole, making all of them feel unique, which is something that's pretty hard to do for a golf game where you're just hitting a ball into a hole 18 times in a row. This game also just has an absolutely effervescent vibe that I think is only accomplished on GameCube games, where it's like, I don't know how to even describe it. There's a certain charm that they have that just was lost in the Wii era and never really came back. Ooh, one last thing about this game that just absolutely knocks it out of the park. All of Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong's voice clips are from Donkey Kong 64.
Okay.
Now for Mario Golf Advance Tour. This was of course on the Game Boy Advance, and basically just imagine Mario Golf for the Game Boy Color, but for the Game Boy Advance. It's largely the exact same game. There are of course some improvements. They added in star characters just like Mario Golf Toadstool Tour did. There's a few more stats to invest your experience points in, and there's a larger roster of characters. I'd go over the story mode again, but it is, in all honesty, basically a remake of the Game Boy Color game. You're introduced to a golf club, you go around and do some quick challenges, you eventually start doing some tournaments. The Mario characters are treated as golf legends, and eventually you work your way up to playing against them in a tournament, and bada boom bada bing, that's the story. One vast improvement that I think it has over the Game Boy Color game is that it is kind of in a 3D view. Obviously it's not 3D because it's a sprite-based game, but if you were to shrink down the size of Mario Golf Toadstool Tour to a small screen and then put Advanced Tour right next to it, you might not be able to tell the difference, other than the fact that you're playing with really weird, realistic characters. Starting with the courses, we actually have 4 of them returning from the original Game Boy Color game. The Marion course, which is a simple grassland, easy for beginners. Palms, which is a tropical land with a lot more water hazards than the previous level. Dunes, which is filled with bunkers and a lot of out-of-bounds areas, and Links, which is a coastal area with very high wind speeds. Lastly, we have the unlockable Mushroom Tourney, which is a much more Mario-themed course, and of course these courses are listed from easy to hardest. You also have 2 sort of mini courses. You have Elf's Short Course, which is basically used for side games, and then you have the Cuckoo Course, an extremely short challenge in the story mode. As for characters, there's actually an impressive 18 characters, and almost an even selection of original characters and Mario characters. You have your player characters for the story mode, Neil and Ella, being male and female respectively. Then you start out with Mario, Peach, Yoshi, and Donkey Kong all unlocked. You then have 8 unlockable characters in the story mode, all returning from the original game: Putz, Joe, Grace, Sherry, Tiny, Azalea, Genius, and Kid. And then, unfortunately, there's yet 4 more characters that are only available if you connect to Toadstool Tour. You have Luigi, Bowser, Waluigi, and Wario. Luigi was actually unlocked through a really cool thing, admittedly cool, if you have all of the hardware for it, where you could send your player character to Toadstool Tour to do little mini games where they would gain experience for the Game Boy Advance game. And if you did this, you would just automatically unlock Luigi. Bowser, Waluigi, and Wario were each unlocked by having a certain amount of best badges in Toadstool Tour itself, so you actually had to play the other game to even unlock them. And of course, all of these are unavailable in the Wii U Virtual Console, because again, they didn't decide to just have them already unlocked, which is baffling to me, but who cares? I'm actually going to go over all the game modes because I feel like it's a bit more substantial than the Game Boy Color version, and so they're actually worth mentioning. I'm not going to explain each of these every single time they come up. I'm going to assume you know what each of these are. You have Stroke Play, Character Match, which doesn't unlock anything this time, Doubles, Speed Golf, Club Slots, Go-Go Gates, which is basically ring mode, Near Pin, Training, Star Tournaments, and Double Star Tournaments. Pretty much all of these modes are returning from the Toadstool Tour game, so I don't feel the need to go too far into them. This is a bit of an easier game compared to Toadstool Tour, but it is still difficult near the end, especially once you start doing Elf's Short Course and the Cuckoo Course, so get ready for that. We only have one more game to go over now, Mario Golf World Tour for the 3DS. This is the only one that didn't release with an RPG counterpart on a different system, mainly because it's already on a handheld system, and what were they going to do, release an RPG on the Wii? This one came out in 2014 and was the last Mario Golf game for a very long time, all the way up until 2021 where they finally made another. Mechanically, the game is extremely similar to Mario Golf Toadstool Tour. There's a few added things. You can aim with the gyroscope. Don't know why you'd do that. You can put certain spins on the ball using touchscreen controls instead of using weird control stick movements in the middle of your shot, which is a little bit nicer. But they also added in a bunch of new modes with a bunch of new mechanics that I'll go into in a little bit. Let's talk about those courses. So, there's 16 of them, for a total of 234 holes. While a lot of those are downloadable courses, even not counting DLC courses, there's still way more than there ever was in any of the previous games. They're also separated into course types. There's Castle Club courses, which are not very wacky, very basic, not very many Mario elements implemented. And then there's Mario World courses that are based off of common Mario World themes and have a lot more Mario-themed hazards. So to start off with the Castle Club courses, we have the Forest course. This is your basic grassland course. Once again, there's a lot more trees and hazards in this one because there's not a second grassland course that's similar to it, but a little bit harder this time. But it's still the easiest of them all and you shouldn't have too much trouble. We have the Seaside course, which has a beach on most of the holes, so a lot of sand hazards, and a lot of water hazards as well, and usually has a bit of a higher wind speed than normal. We have the Mountain course, which is, surprisingly, not desert-based. There are a lot more bunkers though, and there's pits off the side of courses that you can fall into. There's not a lot of rough to land into here. And for the last of the Castle Club courses, there's the Sky Island course, which is a bit of a special case. All of the holes are par 3, and they all are on separated islands where you hit directly to the green, and then usually use 1 or 2 shots to get into the hole. Even though this is considered a Castle Club course, there's a few Mario characters that can be seen in the background here. Next, we're getting into the Mario World courses, which have much more drastic Mario themes than anything we've seen before. Starting off, we have Peach's Gardens, which is completely pink. This also features little dash panels on the ground that'll make your ball roll a lot faster than normal. Also, a little fun fact with the music, it's a remixed version of the music for Peach Gardens on Mario Kart DS, which is a pretty neat callback. Next we have Yoshi's Lake, which is based off of Yoshi's Story and Yoshi's Woolly World, but I see the Yoshi Story impact a lot more. The main gimmick of this course is that there's a bunch of standing water hazards, which is like a normal water hazard, except you hit the ball from out of the water, similar to a bunker, and it inhibits your shot a lot. And the music is a remix of the title screen music for Yoshi's Story. Next up, we have Wiggler Park. This isn't based on anything specific, but the idea is you're really tiny, and you can see some Mario enemies in the background that are huge, like Goombas and Wigglers, and you're kind of just hitting through like a garden type area. The gimmick here are the giant enemies themselves, where your ball can bounce off of them and make them all do weird animations. The music is the Honey Hive Galaxy from Super Mario Galaxy. Next we have Cheep Cheep Lagoon, which is again not based off of anything specific, but it's just an underwater course. Oddly enough, being an underwater course, there are 0 water hazards, because you're already in the water. The gimmick of this course is your shots act as if it's always raining, which slows down your shots in the air, has higher wind speeds, and slows down your shots a lot when it's rolling. The music is just the basic underwater theme from Super Mario Bros. Next we have DK Jungle, which is based off of the Donkey Kong Country Return worlds. There's a bunch of different gimmicks that are all based on the Donkey Kong franchise. There's TNT barrels, there's chomps, Donkey Kong enemies. A lot of fun is had with this one. There's not really a cohesive theme with each of the courses. They're all wildly different though, and generally extremely difficult. Lastly, we have Bowser's Castle, which is just a generally Bowser-themed course. Very similar to the Bowser Badlands from Toadstool Tour. There's a bunch of obstacles like Bob-omb Swamps and Chain Chomps throughout all of the courses. The music for this course is a mix of the castle theme from Super Mario Bros. As well as Bowser in the Sky theme from Super Mario 64. After this, we have all of the DLC courses, which I don't actually have to go too in-depth into because these are all remade courses from Mario Golf for the Nintendo 64. We straight up have the Toad Highlands and Koopa Park. All 3 of the next ones were renamed to be stages from New Super Mario Bros. U, but they're still the exact same as the original stages from Mario Golf. Shy Guy Desert has been renamed to Layer Cake Desert, Yoshi's Island has been renamed to Sparkling Waters, and Boo Valley has been renamed to Rock Candy Mines. And lastly, Mario Star is actually not renamed, but it's had a complete overhaul, and instead of being on regular courses, it takes place in space with a lot of Mario Galaxy themes to it. And then for all the characters, we have 21 to go through. You start off with Mario, Luigi, Peach, Yoshi, Daisy, Donkey Kong, Bowser, Wario, Waluigi, Boo, Bowser Jr., and Diddy Kong. You have unlockable characters in Toad, Kamek, Paratroopa, and Birdo, and then you have DLC characters with Gold Mario, Toadette, Nabbit, and Rosalina. Lastly, you have a Mii character that's used for the story mode of this game. That's right, I said story mode. Now, before we get into story mode though, all the characters basically act the same as they did in Toadstool Tour. There's no new stats and they all still get their star rank through character matches. To unlock each of the unlockable characters, Toad, Kamek, Paratroopa, and Birdo, you need a certain amount of star coins from challenge mode to unlock them. 40 for Toad, 45 for Kamek, 50 for Paratroopa, and 55 for Birdo. I'll go over the star coins in a second. Let's go over that story mode though. So basically this game was kind of split into two different sections to get over the fact that there's not two separate games on two different consoles that act as an RPG and just an arcade golfing game. In Castle Club, you'll play as your Mii and you'll tackle all the different tournaments to unlock further tournaments and also get coins to be able to buy equipment for your Mii and give it completely different stats. With the right loadout, it's possible to become the most powerful power character, the most accurate weak character, or just have a wild fade or draw or whatever you really want out of your Mii. Very similar to Mario Tennis Open with its Mii character. This is also where you'll unlock Sky Island by doing the one-on, one-putt challenge, which is the same as the one-on, one-in challenge from Toadstool Tour. There are just an absolute ton of unlockables to get here. There's basically an achievement system where doing different kinds of tasks will unlock full costumes for your Mii, and these costumes generally don't have the most impressive stats, but they're just interesting and cool. Kind of like theoretical stats for characters that wouldn't get in on their own, but they just put it in as a costume anyway. Examples of some of these achievements is completing the one-on, one-in challenge on the Sky Islands, succeeding 20 times in each of the training games for drives, approaches, and putts, and many, many more. Also, you can talk to characters and they have dialogue. You can speak to Waluigi and he has words to say to you. It's a little wacky, and I love it. Even though it may seem like the bulk of the gameplay is in the little club story mode, it's really not. The other half of the game is called, simply, Mario Golf. This is where basically all of the content from the other console Mario Golf games is at. You are allowed to use your Mii from the story mode though. The one thing that is missing is the tournament mode because this is basically covered in the club area, so it's not really needed again, it'd be kind of redundant. Most of your content is going to be in the section called single player. So in all of the single player options that aren't challenges, you're basically able to customize a game to your liking. You can play single player, match play, point play, or speed golf. And you can change the win settings, you can choose club slots, you can choose how many players, whatever you want. And this will just basically passively unlock costume pieces for your Mii character. However, what you want is in the challenges. The challenges section has 10 challenges per course. Each of these challenges will give you 1 star coin, and completing the match play challenge in each course will give you a star character. Each course will have 2 star coin missions where you collect a star coin while going throughout a hole. It's very similar to Ring Shot. Then you'll have Ring Shot missions, which is the same as it's always been, very difficult. You'll have a score play section where you play 9 holes of the course for the highest score. Then you have the match play, which I mentioned before gives you your star character, and then a random assortment of other missions. As I said previously, your star coins do give you your unlockable characters, but they also give you your Mario courses. At 7 star coins, you'll get the first Mario course, at 14 you'll get the next one, so on and so on every 7 star coins. Once you hit 90 star coins, you then unlock 10 more challenges for every single course. These give you moon coins if you complete them. There's not as many rewards for the moon coins as there are for the star coins, but there's still a few, so it's still worth going through. The main reward is the pro difficulty at 90 moon coins, and then Kitsune Luigi at 100. Something's a little weird in a lot of these modes though. There's items. Just in various challenges, sometimes there are items, sometimes they're not. But these items have a huge effect on how you will play. At the start of each challenge, you'll be given as many items as there are holes divided by 3. So say you're playing 9 holes, you're gonna be given 3 items. You can also collect items by hitting question mark blocks in the actual stage itself. The mushroom will make your ball roll really far after it lands. The fire flower gives your shot more power and will burn straight through trees and some other obstacles. The ice flower will allow your ball to bounce a lot of times. In addition to on water, but not on lava. The bullet bill will make your ball turn into a bullet bill at the peak of its shot and just travel in a straight line a long distance. It'll ignore any wind effects. A bomb will allow you to hit the ball in full power despite it being in the rough or in a sand trap. The boomerang flower drastically increases the draw or fade of a shot. The note block will create a jump block in midair, letting you get around a few hazards. The tornado will suck up any nearby coins. This is obviously for the coin collecting modes. The kabam will make your ball drop immediately wherever you use the item. And the gold flower is the same as a fire flower, except it also gives you a coin for every yard the ball travels. Some of these items are available in certain modes, some of them aren't. Obviously the gold flower is not going to appear in any mode that doesn't include coin collecting. Same goes for the tornado. And sometimes you'll need to use these items in a certain way to get your ball through all of the rings in the ring challenges. So in a way, it's a bit more difficult in terms of strategy in the ring challenges, but I still retain that nothing will surpass the difficulty of Toadstool Tour's ring challenge. This game easily has the most amount of content, even though it might be a little bit more difficult to find because you wouldn't expect to find most of the content in the quick play section, but still, it's all there. It's not really missing any of the modes that the previous game had. It's just arranged in an odd way that you may like, you may not like. Also, this game had online tournaments. Usually these tournaments would have a few weeks where you're allowed to play in them and you would try to get the best score you could. And there would be a leaderboard that you could check whenever you did it, and often the rewards for these tournaments were coins. That's really it. Nothing was ever too special. And of course there were some tournaments that you could only play if you had the DLC, which I do think the DLC is absolutely worth it because it was only a $40 game to begin with, so just saying. And just as a participation prize, you would always get a unique gear item for your Mii, which is just nice. I liked the competitive aspect of it. I really hope that it comes back for Super Rush, but I'm not holding on to too much hope there. Some of these online tournaments had different modes. There were some for stroke play, some for coin collecting. There was even one best drive contest, and then they never did it again. Same with a one-on-one putt contest. You would just see how long you could go getting one-on-one putt, and the max was 18. So there were a lot of first place players with 18 as a score, and it was definitely weird. They could have done it better, but it was a great start for online tournaments for Mario Golf. There's a lot of other just absolutely tiny details with World Tour that I could go deeper into, but I don't want to make this one section super long. If it sounds interesting, play it, but I don't know if there will be much of a reason to go back to it after the new Mario Golf game drops. It was just interesting how I saw this game get almost no attention outside of the main Mario Golf fans. It basically got completely forgotten right after it released, just like Mario Tennis Open. And it's a real shame because I personally believe it to be the best game in the Mario Golf series so far, even better than Toadstool Tour, even if it might not have the vibe to stand up to Toadstool Tour. It absolutely does have the content. And there you go, your complete history on all of the Mario Golf games. Like I said before, I'm not going into Super Rush because, spoilers, we all want to play it and learn on our own, and I'm assuming you're probably watching this because Super Rush interested you and you wanted to check out what else there was, so thank you for sticking through the whole video. I hope I taught you a little something about the Mario Golf series. I learned quite a bit myself, staring at these wiki pages for hours on end. Before we go, I just want to drop a quick thank you to all of my Patreon supporters who normally would get the video a week or so in advance, but I wanted to hit a deadline for this one, so it came out simultaneously. But normally, they would get videos a little bit in advance, and they even get video scripts a bit in advance. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you in whatever's next.